Hey, pay attention on how I break this Bitcoin slang down. Check it, a Bitcoin is a currency, blockchain is technology, transactions take place on it constantly. A public key is your address, private key is your access, cash is trash, but a Bitcoin is an asset. And stacking sats is like accumulating gold, a market order sold, the hodl is the hold. A confirmation is that the transaction is back, the verification intact with minus proof of work. A bankster is a crook, amateur traders get shook. Look, the white paper is the book.
Welcome to Heartbeat, where we huddle around our mempool campfire. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Robbie P. He is a Bitcoin rapper, and he's been making songs about Bitcoin since 2014. And today, we're going to get a chance to get to know him better and see some of his work. Hello, Robbie. How are you?
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me, Dani. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm really excited to have you break things down for us here in the show today.
Yeah, so on the intro, you mentioned that I was making Bitcoin music from 2014. It was more that I was selling music in 2013, 2014, but I didn't release the first Bitcoin song till 2019.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah,
what was your first Bitcoin song?
so it was Bitcoin slang. I released it, in November of 2019. And it was the first, because I wanted to make some Bitcoin songs for quite some time, and I found it cheesy at the start. I couldn't make Bitcoin songs that felt like they were organic. It always felt like it was out of place. So when I created Bitcoin slang, that was the first idea that I had that made sense. It's a bit of a parody on a New York 90s rapper. So it wasn't originally my original idea for the whole slang concept, but I applied Bitcoin to it, and it just did really well, especially into the bull run of 2020, 2021. So yeah, that was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard it, and you go through like all the different little I call them memes, but like inside jargon and like what they mean in a really artistic way. It's great. It's wonderful work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that was the point, like getting the language about Bitcoin out there where people can understand it. I think it's educated some people around the world. I've had some people say, I like listening to this because it reminds me of all the other little bits and pieces about Bitcoin. So, yeah.
Yeah, and at the beginning, there's a lot of words I had to Google, to be honest, because there's a lot of inside jokes.
On the specific song, or just in the culture in general?
Just in the Bitcoin culture in general, but many words that you use in the song were part of the things I had to Google, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Or why we say hodl, or like I had to Google a lot of stuff at the beginning.
Yeah. It's always that learning curve. How long have you been into Bitcoin for?
I first heard of Bitcoin like in 2014 and dismissed it completely. Somebody I knew was making a movie about it, and the way I dismissed it is so cynical, because what I said is like, no, it's impossible to have digital currencies without the double spend issue. Like I didn't even do research. I just responded with
Because the digital idea,
yes.
Like file types. Have you got computer science background?
I have since then, because I went to computer science school when I got pregnant and graduated like a year and a half ago. So yeah, but I was originally a filmmaker.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So, and then in 2017, when I realized my mistake and turned the bus around.
Yeah. But now, do you think the computer science stuff has like giving you more understanding of the computer systems architecture of Bitcoin?
Definitely, because I've been going to like the chain code programming classes. I've been like getting involved with how to create transactions, validate transactions, build blocks. So yeah, computer science definitely works to understand like the underlying technology and the cryptography, and like because there's a lot of, in mainstream Bitcoin, there's a lot of language that is not true, just to make it easier for the general public to pick it up. So, I mean, sometimes I get a little bit frustrated with that mainstream style, because I think it would be better to educate people with what Bitcoin really is. Because Bitcoin is not anonymous. Bitcoin is not private. If you don't use it correctly, you won't be taking advantage of those like aspects about it. So I think it would be more empowering if we were more willing to teach people Bitcoin, what Bitcoin really is, instead of sugarcoating it to make it easier to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but tell me more about you. So, how many songs have you made about Bitcoin? Which one is your favorite?
Yeah. The amount of songs I made about Bitcoin. Maybe 8, 7, 10, 12, somewhere in that bracket, because my theory is before I started rapping about Bitcoin, I was in like 2010, 2009, I was rapping about gold and silver. So for me, I've had the idea, understanding about the debasement of money, and I've always been putting that into music. So technically, every song's a Bitcoin a song. It's just that it didn't become Bitcoin until 2019. But my favorite one will be the one that I release next week, because it's fresh. It's a brand new one. So I've been having fun performing it on my YouTube channel. I've been doing lives in the last few days. Yeah.
Nice. I'm glad you're still working on new things. So why were you so interested in the debasement of money, like from so early on?
I think, you know how people have this moments where they get like, they recognize the matrix, kind of the overlay digital architecture of the matrix on the natural world. And I was really young when I realized that. I just was really young. I realized that politicians were corrupt. And in school, I started rebelling because I understood that a lot of it was nonsense. I just understood intuitively. So then when I started researching about finance, and it would probably go back to when my ex-partner was pregnant with our daughter. At that time, I thought to myself, like, I need to find a way to invest and get ready for her life. And back then I was looking into stocks and everything. But then I've come across some Robert Kiyosaki books. I discovered like the idea about sound money, gold, silver, precious metals, commodities. And then that trickled over when I discovered Bitcoin. Like, I didn't start buying straight away, but I instantly saw the promise of it, exactly what it would offer for the world. So, yeah.
Sorry, could you say the name of the writer that first led you into this?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, Robert Kiyosaki with the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was really into his books when I first started this journey. And obviously now a lot of people have mixed opinions on him in the Bitcoin space and in finance. But he was just someone that had a lot of information about being an entrepreneur versus an investor versus self-employed and versus being an employee. And it just all made sense for me. And I was in a job that I really didn't like, and I wanted to find a way out of it. And obviously I was in a rat race for quite some time, and then the kid came, and then that just kind of shakes everything up, like, okay, how's this going to look? So it was really tough. And then because of everything that happened thereafter, I just saw more and more injustice in a lot of hierarchical systems, you know, across the board. So it upset me. And I realized that Bitcoin was able to offer people something solid, because I've been waiting for the dollar to collapse since 2011. Like, I've just waiting. Dollar gonna collapse today? No. Okay. And Max Kaiser's been saying it as well for the whole time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's difficult to, I mean, I know why we talk about the collapse of the dollar and why we are anti-fiat, but amongst all of the currencies or all the empires to be under, like, the control of an empire, I think that the United States is the least evil of amongst the evils.
The least evil or the most evil? I didn't catch that.
No, I mean, like, out of all the empires that you could be under control, I think that being under the American control is not as terrible as how horrific other things could be.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with the U.S. collapsing after like a couple other countries.
Yes, and I think we're expecting others to collapse first, because USA is a strong country still, even though it's fallen apart. Like, you see the immigration and everything else. But when we look at Australia, and like, I'm not sure which country you're from specifically, if you're in America now or you've got a European accent.
I'm in the U.S. now, but I'm from Colombia.
Oh, sorry. So Colombia. I don't. All right. So Colombia. There you go. So in Colombia, I don't know what it's like, but in Australia, there's no weight and pull. This country doesn't have any movement, no power. You know, they can, the government can get together and talk about Israel and Palestine, but it doesn't change anything in the world. And so I think Australia would probably collapse first before America, because America is still the stronghold, I guess, the reserve thing, you know, the reserve greenback and all the rest of it. So you're right.
Yeah. Well, and just culturally, there is still quite a respect for freedom. I mean, the people have a huge respect for freedom, even if the government is trying to infringe on it at the moment. So, yeah, I mean, I also have to be very grateful, you know, for the opportunity of being here, because as a Colombian, I mean, I love my country, I love where I'm from, but it's hard to live your entire life looking over your shoulder. So I do have a lot of gratitude for the experience that it is to live in the United States. But
Yeah.
I do agree with the anti-fiat movement.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Or,
I think if the
yeah.
money, this is the thing, if the money was right, then the legal structure, the judiciary systems would be perfect. They would work if the money wasn't corrupt. But because the money's all bollocks, everything else is now breaking down. And, you know, yeah.
Falling apart around it. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, we skipped some steps. Why don't you tell me how you discovered Bitcoin and like the journey that you took that eventually led you to become completely orange pilled?
Completely orange pill. So, well, because like, you know, we all have the altcoin phase, right? So I went through my
Yes.
altcoin phase. But there was a coin, like I've talked about this in other streams and stuff, Quark coin. I bought Quark coin, which is a zombie coin now. It was 4 times as secure as Bitcoin, like 4 times the encryption, 4 times the supply, 4 times as fast, and it rugged 4 times as fast as the next coin. So I lost a lot of money on that one. I made a bad move, and that was my first shitcoin experience. In 2017, I had some good wins on altcoins. There was a gentleman, he goes by the name of Cliff High, and he has these web bot reports. And he was doing
Okay.
web scraping, pulling data together. And so in 2017, I was reading these reports, basically like a short list of altcoins, and I was looking at the fundamentals, and I did okay on a few. But it wasn't, I didn't get fully orange pilled until maybe the last 3 or 4 years. I did some NFTs in 2021 or 2022, and I just realized that the crossover into an Ethereum community did not work. And I was the Bitcoin rapper, you know? So, and then I just realized Bitcoin is, you know, there is no second best, like the Sailor meme. But the whole journey started from when my daughter was in her mum's belly, you know, in her womb. It all just started there, realizing I got to be responsible. So started researching, studying, and over the years, rabbit holes.
How did you learn that when you first discovered Bitcoin? How did you find out it existed?
So I was watching a YouTube video. This guy would talk a lot about woo-woo stuff, but he would also talk about cryptos. And he just said, oh, you know, and this Bitcoin thing is $2 today. And I'm listening and I'm thinking, $2? Yeah, $2. And I didn't know, okay, all right, whatever. Because he talked about a lot of stuff that I didn't research and other stuff I did. And then someone, a family friend, came to me and said, Robert, Bitcoin, it's awesome. It's the thing, you know, and he understood it. We both have similar values. The second he told me about it, like a transparent ledger, immutable, government can't control it, decentralized, government can go F themselves. I was like, yes, let's do this. And then that's kind of how it started. And then obviously, because I got a history with abusing marijuana, so I was in rehab in 2020, and so I went in and out of buying, selling, supporting my addiction, and getting clean, and you know, going back and forth. So it's been a crazy 10 years, but now we're on the other side of it. So everything's looking green and rosy. So I'm happy.
I don't know if saying everything is looking green is the right way.
Okay, everything's rosy. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, I live in the state of California. So, I mean, here, marijuana is legal at a recreational. Like, you no longer even need a medical card. So there's no judgment here. I mean, it's like altcoin, like an altcoin. You all go through that phase, then you realize that life raw is more intense and more, like, has more to offer, and you have more to offer life.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. But it is also another thing when you have are susceptible to addictive behaviors, then
Yes.
so that's been a different learning curve of moderating things, you know, like I've never been a drinker. It was just always the marijuana I had an issue with because I just enjoyed it so much. Like it was so fucking awesome, and I have to stop it. Like how much does that suck? So yeah.
No. And honestly, for people who have addictive behavior, because for me it's a little bit like that as well, like that happens with Bitcoin also. You become addicted to Bitcoin in a way and like fall down the rabbit hole and then like are like pursuing information to kind of find out as much as you can about which way to approach it. I think it's a big fulfiller right there, Bitcoin, understanding Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah. There's an obsession level. Yeah.
Obsession level. Okay. So what does Bitcoin mean to you? We've talked a little bit about debasement, but why don't you tell me, like, okay, we've talked about the problem. What does Bitcoin actually mean to you in terms of like how it's the solution?
As the evolution of Bitcoin?
No, as like we talked about debasement as being the issue. Can you talk to me about what Bitcoin means to you in terms of being a solution?
Okay. You know, it's a funny question because when I get asked this, I've been asked this different ways, and for me, when I've been here for as long as I have observing, it's hard to answer because the solutions already come for me. Like I'm already here. The solutions solved my problems. So it's like it can solve other people's problems, but they just need to learn about it, you know, and then it'll solve their problems. So like for me, it's a funny one. I don't know. And also because I am Christian, so I like to be careful about putting Bitcoin as the savior of all saviors, you know? So I put Jesus up first, and then, you know, he creates everything, and then we create coins and all the rest of it. People get corrupt, and then Satoshi comes along and creates this thing. And it seems to be like, to me, it's like God's money. So I feel like if I wanted to get deep on it, which I probably could, but it's, how do I describe this in a nutshell? If you think about the people that, like, the original narrative for Bitcoin early on, the unbanked people, right? The people in the third world countries that don't have bank accounts. They don't have bank accounts because they don't have birth certificates, right? They don't have a legal name that represents them to be able to trade in commerce. So Bitcoin basically opens this up for all the people that are unbanked who don't have birth certificates, IDs, driver's license, Medicare cards. They don't have any of this. And all of a sudden they can step into the global, I guess, the circular economy that Bitcoin offers and actually level up in life because their governments aren't doing anything to improve things for them. So for me, that seems powerful.
Yeah, that one was powerful for me too, because coming from a third world country, well, I know personally a lot of people who fall in that category. But I'm curious. You said like you said Bitcoin has already solved it for me. So what things in your life did Bitcoin streamline and kind of solve for you?
Well, obviously outpacing inflation and getting like the words that British Hodl would use, like fabulously wealthy pretty quickly. Instead of 100 years, it's 10 years or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, so that's good to have money, to have resources to be able to support myself, and I can do my music thing with the luxury to focus on this. Obviously, if I want to send money, I pay people across the world to Canada and in other areas for services. I pay in Bitcoin. You know, I've got vinyl records that I made up of my new songs. I sold a number of those at the Bitcoin conference for Bitcoin. So like the middleman, like when I was setting up my Shopify store, this is a real practical example. I'm setting up Shopify store and I have to put all the little numbers and details in about exchange rates, tax and shipping fees and calculate everything. And then Bitcoin it's just seamless. The money comes in, especially over Lightning Network when I was transacting that way. It's just all the bullshit, all the little bureaucracy, red tape, roadblocks, things you got to do, tick the box here, fill the form there, click submit, it's gone. And I get my time back. And so for me, that's important too, you know, but I still live in the fiat world. You know, I still get money that's in fiat and I make it Bitcoin and vice versa. So, yeah.
I think that's really interesting what you just said, that in a way, what you also saved was not just having to skip all the bureaucracy, but you earned back your time that is spent doing all that bureaucracy, because it's horrific. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you're producing in Bitcoin. well, sorry, you're not producing music. You're producing music, you're selling it for Bitcoin, you're able to provide for your daughter. And you talked about the Lightning Network. What I was wondering is, do you trust third parties, or do you run all your nodes, or do you manage a Lightning node? How do you overcome those technical issues in Bitcoin?
Yeah, so so obviously cold storage, I got that in the bag, and I've got, a pretty cool secure setup, but I'm not running my own node. I've contemplated, because I've got a spare computer, running a node on that, or buying an actual dedicated Raspberry device to run a node. So at the moment, when it comes to Lightning payments, I'm relying, I don't know how Get Albi works. Apparently it's custodial, but it's not. I haven't done too much research on that. I've been studying more Nostr. But yeah, so I'm stepping towards, because there's so many levels. Base layer, I understand. It's taken me some time to get to level 2, layer 2. And that's what I found when I was messing around with Ethereum smart contracts, trying to do an NFT, because there's a promise there for artists to be able to level up, but it's a false promise. And I realized that, And so so if you want to study a crypto, all the cryptos, if you're a trader, you can look at charts. But if you want to learn about a crypto, you actually have to dedicate a lot of time just for one Bitcoin, for one crypto. So to learn about everything about Bitcoin is going to take you like 10,000 hours. You can't spend 10 hours in Ethereum looking at smart contracts ERC20, because you got to study Nostr now, that's what I realize. So
I hear you. It's a struggle we are all going through.
Yeah, so we're getting there, but it feels like you've got a node, like you've solved it. You got your own node, and you're running it all smoothly, and everything's going well.
Well, I mean, what I want to do in the show is work through the steps to doing it from scratch, because I want the average person to feel how do you call it, courageous enough, like have the confidence to do it and not feel like that's for other people. So what I'm doing is sometimes I'm not preparing. Recently, I've been doing a ton of interviews, so haven't had a chance to do any technical episodes, but we're putting time aside for that now, because what happens if you prepare the material in advance is that then when you're going to do it for the camera, you already downloaded the app, so you take for granted certain steps that someone else might struggle with. So I kind of like doing it more raw and more like going through the struggle on the camera, so that people can understand that it's just because I studied computer science doesn't mean I know it, and also to give people the skills to figure it out on their own, instead of like relying on someone else to provide to them the information, to kind of see the process by which I figure it out, so they can begin to ask themselves the correct questions, so they can do it on their own in the future with different tools. So yeah, I mean, I do run a node and I have a setup, but like for the show, I'm going to try to do everything from scratch. I did want to mention a technical thing to you, and is that recently it's come about that Raspis are no longer like a go-to node builder for security reasons and also for speed reasons, because the UTXO set is growing so large that it's becoming really difficult to sync Raspi nodes. So just have that in mind when you pick your poison.
Great, because that makes sense, because I'm looking for something that's a solid node, because for Shopify, if I want to accept payments with Bitcoin, I need a node. Apparently I can get like a trusted intermediary, but I prefer to get it all set up properly. But you know what you were talking about the tutorials, and you do the tutorial and you're like, okay, cool, I know now how to do it, and now I can show someone. I've been in the same situation where I've set something up and I'm like, I want to teach this. And sometimes you go so far into it that you're right. Like you want to be able to catch all the little bits and pieces along the way.
Yeah,
I've been there. I've been there. I relate to that.
I mean, obviously, if you're super diligent and you make note of every single struggle you had, then you could do it. But it's actually kind of easier to accept the ignorance and go with the ignorance and just go through the whole process. the other thing I thought maybe would be an interesting point to touch on is the NFT false promise, and what if we could explain to the audience a little bit, why is it that it's not really, like, why is it that the blockchain is not really designed to transact every single asset on earth, but just money?
Yeah, so you, I think, look, I maybe have a controversial view. I think there might be a blockchain in the future where these artworks are tokenized. Maybe it's a separate thing, but I don't want to go down that path. But overall, what I noticed when doing NFTs, there were artists like visual artists like Beeple, and there's a Melbourne artist in my country. She goes by the name of Lambie. They did really well with NFTs, and, there's a certain argument that I can agree with as far as when you're an artist and how art has been devalued in the modern world. Music costs a fraction of a cent to listen to now, and you have the world's music library at your hands, and this and what, however musicians and artists would rely on their craft and be able to do their craft, it's that the rug's been pulled out from underneath them, so now they have to go on social media and do TikTok dances, just to sell a painting or sell a song. So I think there is a promise there somewhere in blockchain world, whatever, about tokenizing art. But what I liked about it was the crowdfund community aspect. But then what I didn't like about it was that I had to engage with people in Ethereum, and a lot of them were doing shitcoin stuff, whatever. And I realized that if I was in that environment, people in the Bitcoin space would take me less, and I'm hardcore Bitcoiner at heart. I just wanted to experiment with the tokenization of artwork on the blockchain and how that would look. And to me, we still got a long way to go. And now we've got the value for value in Bitcoin, so that's promising. Have you heard of Wave Lake?
Wave Lake?
Wave Lake, yeah.
No.
I'll send it to you through X later, but you can basically go on there, listen to music, and if you like a song, you can zap an artist some lightning sats. Yeah, it's really cool.
I agree with some of your controversial position in the sense that Bitcoin does offer the opportunity, or cryptocurrencies, to return the power to the individuals, because now, like most things, the music industry is controlled by major corporations. And it's very hard for individuals to monetize their music without a propaganda machine behind them. So hopefully, in that sense, it does contribute, and probably the way it will contribute the most is, like you said, with the funding campaigns, the donation campaigns, and the crowdfunding. I think that is one of the vehicles that Bitcoin might help with. But what I was kind of hinting at was this idea that, like, the reason why Bitcoiners are so against NFTs and against tokenizations is because Bitcoin is only designed to secure the money in the system. It's because it's the only thing it can enforce. Bitcoin can enforce that the money is held by the people who it belongs to. The problem is that it can't enforce. It could track ownership, but it can't enforce it. And that's where Bitcoiners kind of mock the whole situation, because yes, the blockchain might say that this is your car, but if somebody steals it, like, the blockchain can't do anything about it. And you also have to be, like, a little bit worried, because if your token gets stolen, then you want it, or like, or if there's a technical issue where the thing gets done incorrectly, then who does this house belong to? Because, like, now you can't change it, you can't fix it, there's no cognitive support to fix it. So there's a lot of dangers and pitfalls in tokenizing real life assets.
Yeah, I agree. I've even seen that. Yeah, you're right. If you own a smart contract from an ETH address, and then your keys get compromised, and this is like a big project like the Bored Apes or whatever, then yeah, big problems. Yeah. Unless you do multi-sig and the rest of it. But you're right that for Bitcoin, I like that Bitcoin is simple, that it's slow, that you have to double check the address when you're sending coins, because it just confirms how solid it is. And I think the other aspects of intellectual property ownership, because we're talking about property ownership, Bitcoin's property ownership, but it's also store of value and everything else. A song is intellectual property. It's intangible like Bitcoin, but then the old system of the rights ownership and how that's structured is very outdated. It's very heaps of holes in it, you know, because the music industry started off with a lot of mafia involvement. So everything's shady in the music industry. Yeah.
I didn't know that, but it stands to reason because it's people who have money and who can take big risks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you think Bitcoin can help music rights and ownership and that problem that you just discussed?
I'm still thinking about it. I thought about deeply about this, but when I think about the future with AI being able to have a lightning network and doing its own thing, operating on behalf of you on the internet autonomously, that stuff's really fascinating. And you can't do that without a digital currency, and Bitcoin would be great for that. But then when I look at intellectual rights ownership, I mean, the idea of music or even intellectual property goes back to like King Henry II or something. And that even was shady how that kind of came about. So I don't know, like how do we account for song ownership and artists get paid unless we completely scrap the system and build something new, or we have maybe frameworks that kind of work and we have to Bitcoinize it. Because if I get paid royalties, if my song gets played today on Spotify or YouTube, I won't get paid for 9 months. And you think about how much the money devalues in 9 months, we know how bad it is. So I'm waiting 9 months to get 0.03 cents and it loses 90% of its value. It's like, that sucks. I don't want that. So I'm still trying to think about how we can fix this. I like to ponder this. I've got some previous developer experience, so I can look at it architecturally. But really, it needs a team. We got to bring people together to really like open source an idea for music rights ownership that's actually going to work. You know.
I think that you're onto something right there because with the Lightning Network, you could very easily pay royalties with micropayments very quickly. So I
Yeah.
think you're definitely onto something there. That could be. I see a programmer somewhere in a dark hole, like lighting a light bulb right now and starting to type.
Yeah, it starts coding something up. Absolutely. Yeah, I see it too. We're not far off. You know, if I was a bit smarter with Python, I would give it a go, but I'm still learning a little bit of Python. So,
I mean, now with AI, it's crazy to learn new languages because you can add I was a terrible Google searcher. I suck at Google searching. It's very hard. Like some people are excellent Google searchers. And what I'm really grateful about like ChatGPT or having AI tools is that you can be more ample with your questions or less capable, like you don't have to fabricate your question as specifically as you did in Google, and the ChatGPT will be able to like, okay, understand your question, offer you some resources. So we really have come a long way.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Libby's Wardrobe. Want to show up to the Bitcoin meetup in style? Pick some swag from the amazing selection at Bitcoin Diaries. Cute t-shirts, embroidered hats, bullish shoes, you name it. Find them all at loveisbitcoin.com/wardrobe.
What is the most surprising experience that Bitcoin has led you to? Or the most
Probably,
intriguing or unexpected?
well, I would say when I performed at the Sydney Bitcoin conference, I wasn't expecting that to happen so soon. And, you know, Bitcoin led me, like, because I haven't, so I got to, like, obviously, you know, I've talked about my past history, marijuana abuse, 2017, I had a really bad car accident and feel like I had to recover physically from that. That's also part of the reason why I slipped into addiction. But before, like I hadn't performed live from before then. So we're talking 2014, 15. So my first full live show since before the car accident was the Bitcoin Alive conference. And I absolutely smashed it. It was the best thing ever. I really enjoyed it. So now I'm thinking next year we might hop around to some other continents and do some shows out internationally.
That sounds really exciting, and I'm sure the Bitcoiners were very supportive because Bitcoiners in a way like are a strong community and they're very supportive to like within the community. If you try to step out of line, it can get a little bit crude, but yeah.
Yeah. And I've said this to other people as well that, you know, in Bitcoin, you come in and you get taught, don't trust, verify. But then you build such good relationships with people that you can start trusting people, because of Bitcoin. Like you can help someone out. Like I've done it before with others and others with me. There was this Ethiopian kid, was it Ethiopian, Nigerian guy, 16-year-old that contacted me on Facebook or Instagram because he come across my music somehow and Bitcoin stuff. And I sent him Bitcoin one time to help him get it out of his exchange. And then he said, oh, I needed it for my mum's medication. And I thought, oh, damn, Nigerian scammer got me 6 months later, after he started the conversation for $30 Bitcoin. But then he came back like 3 months later with the exact dollar value, but I think it was more Bitcoin value. And I was just shocked because he didn't have to do that, like if he needed it for his mum's medication, I understand, but he came back with it to me. And so these are just unexpected things, like I didn't trust him. I sent it to him. I was disappointed. He sent it back and now I can trust him. It's weird, unless he tries to finesse me for more later. I don't know, so we'll see what happens. He's probably playing a really structured, complex scheme here, So
yeah, that's a complex scheme.
yeah, multi-level, mastermind.
Well, is that the world it is really difficult because there are a lot of people trying to make a fast buck scamming you, and but the truth is that there is a lot of genuine people out there that just need a hand and who are really honest and hardworking. So it is a pity like how those people like are distrusted because there are so many other people like looking to take what is not theirs. So yeah, it's a bummer. You said something that made me think about Bitcoin as a religion, because Bitcoin is a little bit like a religion in the sense that if you find like true Bitcoiners, the one thing that is that there's going to be like a shared set of values or a shared ethos. So you already have a lot of things in common that kind of help you build trust with strangers. So I do see how like Bitcoin builds trust. It's in an ironic way.
Yeah, you're right. It's like the mistrust we have with the world builds a certain level of trust amongst ourselves. It's a strange paradox. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there is a certain degree of trust in Bitcoin in the sense that like we're also trusting, like I'm a little bit of a developer, so it's to a little bit of a lesser degree, but we're still trusting that these really smart people, I think a lot of the trust that is in Bitcoin comes from the fact that it's like, okay, there has to be like, I don't know, 1,000 extremely smart people that have gone through the Bitcoin code and believe in this and think of this as being true. And they're amazing cryptographers, they're amazing coders. So like, what do I know? There has to be some truth to this thing, even if I can't verify myself, because we'd have to be like top 10% cryptographers in the world to be able to truly verify Bitcoin, and that's really hard to do.
Yeah. And it's so easy to just go on the internet and you can just look up even the little, if you mistrust something about a code, you can leave, type it in. Like, is there a possibility that this XYZ might have a backdoor or etc. or a virus, or could this be malware? It's very easy to verify, especially on Twitter. Like you're saying, it's all decentralized. If there's something suspicious, someone could have picked it up and reported it, like early in Bitcoin's history with the double spend issue that initially happened. I think there was like an inflation bug that got patched up pretty quickly. So yeah, you're right. Someone will spot something and say something if they're enough integrity. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that event that you mentioned was the only time in Bitcoin where there was a consensus to switch chains, because I think they reversed the chain to a certain point because the network was still small enough that was feasible. And I think that's the only time that there has been like a planned reorg where they discarded the blocks that corresponded to, because there was he exploited an integer overflow in like building the transaction, and he was able to like produce a huge amount of Bitcoin that shouldn't exist, and so that those blocks were made to disappear.
Yeah, do you remember when that happened? Roughly, like what period are we? Is it early before 2013? 2013 to 20? Yeah.
I mean, I'm not totally sure, to be honest, but it had to have been super early, because nowadays, if you use the word planned reorg, you will not survive.
Yeah. Ostracized from the community. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and the only reason why there was consensus over it is because it was a bug. Otherwise, like, there's no way you will get consensus over doing a reorg over any sort of transaction rob, even if it's because somebody got robbed or anything like that. Like, no, but there is no way that there will be collusion for that
Yeah.
nowadays. It's too big.
And that's why I like the decentralized nature. Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you think that this decentralized ecosystem is going to contribute to the propaganda machine, and how is that going to evolve, and what do you think
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah, because I watched the episode with you and George. I find George pretty fascinating with some of his takes, because it's very forward. You know, a lot of people aren't thinking that deeply about some of the obvious stuff, and the idea, like, because I got a song that I released couple months ago, last month before, with Richard Reel, and I was listening to him also on the podcast talk about propaganda, how technically we're creating a form of propaganda, but it's open source propaganda. I can choose to create this propaganda. I could choose to create a propaganda that would be, I don't know, like as an example, satanic, or make music that would be evil, or, you know, whatever, but I choose to educate, etc., put the right information out there. And if the beast of a machine of media out there has such a strong voice of a narrative, then that's like a huge giant, and we're just like small people coming together to make our own giant. But it's just like hundreds of us running around, like throwing rocks up at this giant, you know, this media giant. And the thing is, music, what I learned about music is that it activates both hemispheres of the brain. So when you're in school and you learn row, row, row your boat, or the wheels on the bus go, the reason you learn those songs is because both parts of your brain are activated. So if you look at modern day music and the messaging in that and what it's telling people, the youth and everyone, then it's a certain form of programming, and I'm trying to undo the programming.
Yeah, the situation nowadays is severe because now we are aware of a lot of manipulation tools, very subtle manipulation tools, and the media and the stardom is being used to further an agenda. Somebody's agenda is being furthered via the music industry, the film industry, the news shows. Like, it's difficult to attack, and it's hard to form heroes in today's society. So being able to support each other in a decentralized way makes it more feasible for us to form a group, because it's very difficult to form groups nowadays amongst people to fight for causes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have a curiosity. Because from where I sit, I don't see a lot of Bitcoin musicians. There's more Bitcoin art, like physical art, than I see musicians. Do you ever try to collaborate with other Bitcoin musicians, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it was more this year that I started venturing out to collaborate with Bitcoin musicians. I would say last year, I think last year, February, I got connected with a Bitcoin, like the Bitcoin musician group, kind of spearheaded by Need Creations. He's from Boston, Massachusetts, and he's a big music fan, and obviously he helps run the Massachusetts meetup, or the conference that they've just started. So he's connected me with a lot of artists, and there's a lot of them out there. I could even include you into an X group where it's Bitcoin beats, right? It's all music related, mostly, for the most part. So I've collaborated with Richard Reel, who just does really interesting drum and bass, electronic, hip hop infused music. He uses a lot of AI modeling on his voice and in his imagery. He got another fella involved, The Character, who's also a Bitcoiner. So that song is the Radioactive Bitcoin Hope. And then there's other songs that I'm starting to work on to collaborate with others. Man Like Quirks, I've reached out to him, and I've got a few other people in mind. Like, I wouldn't mind doing something with Tips. What she does, it'd be interesting to see how we could collaborate on something that would come across from, it's like she does spoken word / hip hop rap stuff. It's obviously rhyme, but I wouldn't say it's to a cadence like a rap flow like a lot of rappers do. So I would say it's more spoken word, but it'd be interesting to collaborate with her. I mean, she's helped me get a lot of opportunities in the space, especially the Bitcoin conference. So as far as collaborations, yeah, there's a few starting to happen.
I'm glad to hear. It'll be exciting because eventually, like, Bitcoin art will just be art, and hopefully that'll be the case for the music industry when this whole thing, when we get to a Bitcoin standard. Which brings me to, like, when do you think this is going to start materializing? I mean, some places are getting closer to a Bitcoin standard, but what do you think about it?
I mean, so if I think about it, I released my first Bitcoin song 2019. I've got people that have followed me from back then to now that still haven't bought a single Satoshi. So no matter how much I talk about Bitcoin, they don't get involved. You can bring the horse to water, but can you make it drink? And so I'm one person. If there was more, like, I honestly think if there was more Bitcoiners on Instagram, then we could start to move the needle, because Instagram is like pop culture, I think. X is like the public discussion forum, you know. YouTube, Facebook is the gutter. So, you know, I think in Instagram, that's what we want, is we want more of like Bitcoin stuff, but not memes, not cheesy Bitcoin stuff. We want smart, I guess, high level Bitcoin stuff. But then the algorithms throttle stuff. Like if I put something up on TikTok, a Bitcoin rap, I get a note on my video that says financial advice. So they're operating in ways to keep suppressing. Yeah. How's that?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. Even a song, they even flag the song as financial advice. That's
Yeah.
curious.
That's like when you have an album and it's like parental advice, like you know,
Yeah.
the old black and white sticker, like this one here, parental advisory. You need your parent to sign off on this. That's what it's like. It's annoying. If I want to grow on those platforms, I feel I don't want to play victim, but part of me critically is thinking like the Bitcoin word is not doing good in the algorithm.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. A couple of days ago, out of curiosity, I went to Facebook and looked for Bitcoin groups, and it would
Yeah.
only give me 3 groups, and then it would give me no content found for this word.
Wow.
Yes, I found that interesting. And I do hear what you say about Instagram, because when I first started being a Bitcoiner, I looked for like Bitcoin people on Instagram. And nowadays, some of the bigger personalities actually have Instagram profiles. But like 4 or 5 years ago, nobody even had an Instagram profile. It was quite far and rare. But it's slowly, like, the community is slowly building. But I do, like you say, dislike that a lot of the Bitcoin profiles are like kind of like financial advice, or just like too much like in your face, like the actual coin, or I don't know, it's just too corporate, while the Bitcoin content that I'm interested in is mostly the Bitcoin artist or the Bitcoin lifestyle. Then you have like the carnivores, and you have the the, like, I don't know, the like traders, and the people who speak to you about investment. There's some good profiles, but there is still room for growth in that regard. But that's why, like, the problem is that, like, because Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ethos is against a lot of these social platforms. Like, Bitcoin ethos is against Instagram, it's against Twitter, ultimately, because
Yeah.
they can unilaterally censor people. Then ultimately what we need is a Nostr for images, like an Instagram Nostr, because Nostr is replacing X. But there isn't something in play to replace Instagram yet, in that kind of
Yeah.
like self-hosted style.
Well, at the Bitcoin conference, I met Tips's partner, and he was giving me a lot of cool rabbit holes to go down regarding cloud storage. That's Bitcoin encrypted and pay with Satoshis over Lightning Network for cloud storage. Excuse me. Zap.Stream, which is like a live streaming platform like Twitch. So I've been on there this week. I've done 3-4 hours live streaming on Zap.Stream, and then he's also pointed me in the right direction for Nostr. So I think Nostr basically has to become Instagram. Bitcoin has to become like I explained to someone, when I rap about money, and I'm just talking about money in general, I'm always going to reference Bitcoin in some way. Like I'm talking about Bitcoin money, not fiat money. And that's like my music is Bitcoin standard already. So everyone else has to come to the Bitcoin standard and basically not look at Bitcoin like something to make money and then sell, something to basically adopt completely, you know? And then once we do that, then we'll be there. But this is going to take some time. And unfortunately, it's only when the price goes up to the right that people care to look at it once every 4 years. And then a percentage come and they stick around, you know?
Yeah, I think that my real orange pill moment was around the time that I read that meme that said, Bitcoin is the exit strategy. Because then it was like I was machinating, but then like it started to sink in more and more and more as I began to accept that it wasn't about trading and making a quick buck, but it was about staying here long term.
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
It
the whole, like, yeah, I was going to say, like, the whole limited 21 million minus your stack. So it's 21 million minus whatever you're holding, right? That's what I say, because it means it's less than 21 million. How much have you got? I don't know. How much have I got? You don't know. So it's 21 million minus what you and I have. But then, like, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, so yeah, I lost the point that I was going to make. But yeah, it's 21 million minus your stack.
coins.
Hey?
21 million minus yours, mine, and Satoshi's coins.
Yeah, I was gonna actually make a really good point. Like it was a home run. I forgot what it was. That's okay. I'll remember it later.
Remember in a minute, because
Yeah.
we were talking about. I was saying the thing about the exit strategy and how Bitcoin was for the long run. That's what I was saying. But it's okay. You'll remember in a minute. So
Yeah, I don't know. It's early in the morning here. But, I was gonna make a solid point, but yeah, the exit strategy, the idea of this exit strategy, it's so true. Like that's what I was gonna say. Hyperinflation in Weimar, Germany, it fascinates me because when they were getting paid twice a day because the inflation was going so crazy, what happened to the debt? The debt stayed the same. So inflation kept going crazy. People's wages increased, which means they come also closer to a tax bracket that they have to hit, but the debt stays the same. So if you're in a hyperinflationary state and you've got this much debt, you know, a house mortgage, but you have income coming in, maybe the government's giving it to you, then you can pay the debt off cheaper. Right, and this is like a reverse way to look at it that no one ever realizes. The only person I've heard talk about this was Andrew Tate after I've done the research on the Weimar Germany situation. So in hyperinflation, if you have a lot of income, it's actually good to pay debt off. But the problem is that when banks restrict interest rates and they suck money out of the system, no one has money to hand around. And that's how they stiff people over, unfortunately. And yeah, exit strategy. So if we know mathematically the money's going to continually keep increasing, fixed assets will continue to rise in price. Mathematically inevitable. $1 million Bitcoin.
my entrance to Bitcoin was quite radical because my first job in Bitcoin was editing videos for Tony Vase. I don't know if
Wow.
you, so you're familiar with his work.
Big fan.
And he's very radical maximalist, and with
Yeah.
reason. And so I got Bitcoin philosophy and ethos firsthand, full frame. And at first I fought it. I still had an altcoin. I think I still went through the altcoin stage because we all are idiots and have to like get hurt before we learn.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to touch the stove many times.
But I learned what you're saying. Tone said it in the podcast a lot, which was like, this is a good time to get into debt and buy Bitcoin with your debt money because the inflation will make that debt easier to pay. And I listened.
Yeah, you did. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's a
Yeah.
risky position to take. A lot of people probably can't make that risk because, you know, like no one likes taking loans in the Bitcoin space. But if you like Michael Saylor, that's all Michael Saylor does to accumulate Bitcoin. He just keeps taking loans out and then whatever does his thing with the stocks, yeah, cheap interest rates. He's worked it out. I think he's got a hack that he's exploiting a little bit too much.
Well, I mean, that journey will come to an end at some point in the sense that the volatility, and as people catch on to the trick and do it, it'll be less effective. But yeah, for now, I mean, everybody buys Bitcoin at the price they deserve, and for now, he deserves to earn his money from his little discovery.
Yeah, I guess if he's fixed the problem and he's worked something out, then he deserves to be able to make the most of it, right? I think that's capitalism, right?
Yes, definitely. So, what are you working on right now? I know you mentioned it kind of briefly, but tell me, what are you working on right now? What are you working on next? What are the next steps for you?
So next week we'll be releasing new music for Bitcoin Pizza Day. This is the 4th consecutive year that I've released music for Bitcoin Pizza Day. This started in 2021. And so I've released this. I've got content on the way. I've been looking, I've connected with some video editors. I've got a backlog of content to release. Obviously, I've got behind the scenes stuff from Sydney, like a vlog that I want to release. And I've just started live streaming on Zap.Stream and on my YouTube. And that went really well. Last night, you know, I got zapped 4,000 Satoshis or something like this.
Wow.
So it was not too bad. I always get mixed up, 4,000 or 40,000, one or the other.
Probably 40,000.
Yeah, it was like $7 American, what it worked out to be. So I don't know, but it was interesting because
40,000, I think.
Yeah. So I'm really happy with that. That was just a really good experience. And once again, if I was doing live on YouTube, getting super chats, YouTube would take 30% of the super chat. But on Zap.Stream, I keep all the sats. I just pay 5 Satoshis a minute to be able to use the servers to stream outwards. And Kieran did a really good job on the interface. Like, it's really good. And I'm not selling it because I'm a salesperson. Like, I've used it 3 times this week. Yeah, I like it.
No, I think it's exciting. It's just, it's hard because like we're in this society where like when we get things for free, like YouTube, you get it for free. But I say like with the comments, because in exchange you're kind of selling your soul, because at the time of monetization you're going to get charged, because you're also advertising, like you're also being used for a certain type of advertisement. So with like having potential competitors for video streaming is very appealing. As a filmmaker, I have been looking into this whole thing about like streaming for a long time. But I'm not like with a team, so I'm happy to see them spark up in other places. It's exciting.
I mean, it'd be interesting if you did the live streams of the tutorials in real time. You know, you just have to be careful to not dock something on your browser. But other than that, yeah, I think that might be a good way to do it in real time. People can do it with you, you know, tinker, whatever it is.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I'm trying to grow to a place where I feel confident, because it's also like we've just been starting out. At the beginning, I scripted everything and I was reading it with a teleprompter. Now I'm more comfortable to like act on the fly, but it takes a little bit of time to develop those skills. But I think as we grow, this is a really interesting idea to explore. I just have to find my audience of computer scientists or even just regular people who are interested in tinkering so that we can work together. Yes, definitely. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, it would be great. BTC Sessions is a good example. I've used his tutorials a few times just to help me with hard storage and this and that, or like even back in the day, learning about SegWit and stuff like this. So it comes in handy. And yeah, I find when you're starting off in like a hyper niche community, because that's what this Bitcoin thing is, it's like you have to find the people within the community that will resonate with you, you know, like, because not everyone likes hip hop music. So they might not like Bitcoin hip hop music, but some people that don't like hip hop music like Bitcoin hip hop music. So it's a funny balance, but you'll find your audience. I think, yeah, testing things works.
Yeah, because it's hard to choose. Like I want to appeal to like the Colombians, and I want to appeal to the coders, and it's just too many goals, and I have to like focus on the ones that maybe are more that people have the most to gain from, which is probably helping people to get set up technically, because even though I'm a developer, it's still really complex. It's its own animal, and it has a lot of depth and different ways to approach it. So there's a lot of angles to come at it, and like the right tool differs for different people. Like there's no one size fit all in Bitcoin. Like the node you need to run, if you need to be on Lightning, if you need to be a hardware, if you need to be cold, like it's just so varied, because the money is a tool, and depending on how you're going to use it, that's how your setup has to be. It's very challenging to pick a subject, like a subsection to attack.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially if you're starting off, you want to hit like a large number of people too. So like I can understand if you're doing like the Colombian stuff, maybe there's like lesser population of people that are specific to what you're teaching versus English. But I can see down the road you could easily transfer and do both. Like I don't know, like BTC Sessions. I don't think he even speaks Spanish, but he now has Spanish videos.
Yes.
I
was complimenting him on his. I was a little surprised because I watched some of them, and I was impressed, to say the least.
Yeah.
Actually, I have one last question for you before we wrap it up. Because in Colombia, well, there's no like Bitcoin community. It's not really growing there. What is it like where you live? Is there like a forming community? Do the meetups have a lot of people? Do you have access to all the infrastructure? What is it like?
Yeah, I think that the community here, since I've tapped into it since the Bitcoin conference, really, because I haven't been to any meetups prior the last 5 years, 8 years, maybe, you know, but the Bitcoin going to Sydney and meeting people in person, other Australian YouTubers like Sean Clark, I met some real cool people. So they got the conference that happens in Sydney once a year, and then a number of little bush bashes. So out in the bush somewhere, people get together. It's like a conference, but like you and I or anyone can get up and share an idea about like something to do with Bitcoin. It doesn't even have to be Bitcoin related. And so this is interesting because there's a really strong community building here in Australia, and we all go camping, whatever, and then conference, and then dinner and whatever. It's awesome. It's really good.
I like this thing where people can sign up to speak, like, and don't have to be like hired big time famous people, because sometimes those narratives get a little old, and it's nice to hear new voices and new perspectives. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, it's a good place.
that.
I haven't been to a Bush Bash yet because, like, I went to the conference and now everyone says the next Bush Bash, June, July, come up north. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. I'll go. This will be great.
Okay, so to wrap it up, why don't you tell our audience how they can follow you, how they can find you, how can they support you?
Okay, you can follow me on bitcoinslang.com. That's a Substack. So I'm looking to build more articles there, but it's a good place if people want to sign up to the mailing list. So I've got the email in case I get cancelled. You know what it's like. JV got cancelled on YouTube. It's not good. So you got that. You got RobbieP.net, which is like a link tree of all my links. And then Robbie P on Spotify, Apple Music. Go to my YouTube. YouTube's probably the best place now at the time being because I'm going to get really active there. And look out for next week. We got some music. I don't know when this episode comes out, but Bitcoin Pizza Day, new music just dropped. Will be released.
Yeah, we'll make sure to have it out before that, so that it's before your release. But tell me, so where do you release your music? So next week, when you release your song, how can people listen to it, support you, buy it, etc.?
So I'll make an announcement on bitcoinslang.com with specific links to all the places people can listen, because everyone listens elsewhere. Like maybe you might listen on Apple or Spotify, someone else YouTube. So usually I'll make like an article on my Substack, bitcoinslang.com, and I'll just new music with links to everywhere. If people want to download it, there'll also be links to Wavelake if people want to zap me some sats, you know, value for value. And I'm going to continue live streaming on Zap.Stream as well over the next couple of weeks and hopefully for the rest of the year. I want to build momentum, you know, if I'm going to plan on travel around next year, I want to capitalize on my time and energy, and I think now is good to build momentum, get as much content out there and awareness. So when I am hopping around to different countries, people are excited. Maybe, you know, more people can come to conferences and maybe I can sell more vinyl records. Also, don't forget, more vinyl records for sale. These are the Bitcoin Slang Most Toxic Bitcoin Maxi vinyl record. When's the last time you played a vinyl record?
When I was a child on my dad's record player.
Well, there you go. Vinyl record is back again. So this is like a little memento Bitcoin memorabilia. This is available at jeremylegal.com, but you'll also be able to find it at bitcoinslang.com. And it comes with some Street Cyber stickers, a 5-pack of stickers. So
Nice.
yeah, that's a way people can support. And other than that, yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, Dani. It's been great.
Oh, I really appreciate you coming. So for the audience, you can find the links in the description so that it's easier for you to find all of Robbie's work and you can support him. And Robbie, thank you for joining us. To the audience, thank you for being here, and we look forward to having you on the next episode. We'll see if it's an interview, a technical show, but stay tuned so you can stay up to date with all the Bitcoin news.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you.